Unfortunately, this cult that we've now left, this religion, this religious, organised, brainwashing cult we have left, has given us power and a voice to speak out.
Yep.
Like lions, we now roar.
It's a preventative measure to stop people from joining this lot. Because they're toxic, they're damaging, they commit suicide, people are dying from blood transfusions, they're breaking up families, clinical depressions. I could go on, brother. I love and respect you, I really do.
We do.
But it's not you, it's the religion that you belong to, it's wrong.
Did you know that it was Freemasons? Did you know that the Freemasons started the cult? Did you know that? Did you know that Charles Taze Russell is actually buried within the Masonic grounds with a pyramid and an eye above his head? Did you know that? It's such a shame.
Because we are angry at the way that we have been brainwashed, and that you can stand there. And I know that you are brainwashed, and I just hope that you have actually got something that we've said today and taken it away with you.
We don't want to see any more clinical depressions. We don't want to see anybody else dying on hospital beds. We don't want to see any child molested or raped anymore within this organisation. All the things that you like to hide. So it's not going to happen anymore.
Enough is enough.
Enough. But I don't want to see anybody else, nor does my wife, go through the same mental torment of being inside this religion. No more.
No more.
My story, in a nutshell, I was 5 years old. There was a knock on the door. Man in a suit wanted to talk to my father. I stood near my father's leg, looking up like a 5-year-old little girl, hanging onto his leg. This man in the suit put his foot in the door, held it open, read from the Bible. Next thing you know, no more Coney Island on the weekend with my family. None of that. We'll have none of that. Oh, you like those little pants? No, can't wear them. You're wearing dresses now. I was a little tomboy. And Beatles, any kind of programming on television that had anything that Jehovah's Witnesses do not approve of, that was it. My life changed. 5 years old. There was no college in sight because pioneering. So my dreams were squashed. But the fear of being destroyed in Armageddon was stronger than anything else. To be told by your Puerto Rican father, who works in a factory, who came to the land of milk and honey, New York City, for a better life, and for his kids to have better than him, did not encourage education, but discouraged it. Pretty much took away my will to live, my will to save money. I could never save money. The world might end. I gotta spend this little 50 cents allowance. And, you know, through the eyes of a child, to not see any future. I can only say that the fact that my mother would look the other way during a lot of things, because my mother, she hated the Jehovah's Witnesses. She couldn't stand it. She would not go to any meetings. And it just started to break up our family. It started to pit people against each other. I thought my mother was evil. Any discipline that came from her, she was evil. My dad, he was my end-all. I hung on every word. Wednesday night meetings, when he opened that pink book and showed me that little girl falling in the crack, the earth opened up, buildings, you know, imagine you live in New York City and you're taking a stroll through Manhattan and you look up and see a building and all you can think of is, what if Armageddon comes right now? When is it going to come? Every thunderstorm. a little bit about me.
I look back and I gave 15 years of my life to the cult, to the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I look back and I think I had no use at all. I spent the best years of my life knocking on people's doors, selling them a lie. It damages, it divides families.
For a start, you'd technically lose your freedom. You would lose your individuality. You wouldn't be able to think for yourself anymore, so to say. You wouldn't be able to do what you once did. You're dictated to on what you can watch, what you can't watch, what is good, what is bad, who you can and who you can't talk to. Yes, who you can and cannot talk to. It's unbelievable. As you progress towards your baptism, your life slowly starts to ebb away all the more. You become more of a watchtower drone. It's quite sad, really. Everything you once were, everything you once had, you lose. You'll lose your life. You'll lose everything you were. You will not be the person you were when you started. You'll start to lose friends. You'll start to drift away. You won't notice it, because it's normal to you. But slowly, piece by piece, inch by inch, the only friends you have are the people in the congregation, in your kingdom hall. These aren't real friends. These aren't true friends. They'll drop you like a hat at the first sign of nonconformity, and then they won't want anything whatsoever to do with you. Don't become slaves to the watchtower. They'll drag you down, and they will destroy your life.
I could not take my life anymore. There was so much negativity, feelings of worthlessness, feelings like I've been such a failure, criticism, and judging. I grieved my childhood. I didn't have one. I grieved who I could have been. Had I not been born and raised and told who I had to be. I grieved doing things, going places. I grieved all the years lost because of them. My teenage years were horrible. I again can't tell you how many times I tried suicide. I ran away twice, brought right back. In fact, when you run away, don't run away to another Jehovah's Witness's house, okay? I did not have a choice. I was born and raised into this, and the fear that is instilled, and you can't describe the fear, and you don't even know it's there. And she says, "What do you mean you knew?" I said, "Well, I was born and raised Jehovah's Witness." And she says, "Oh, honey, don't you know they were a cult?" Yeah, that life, my whole entire life changed. Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. Well, no wonder I feel so messed up. I felt at that moment some sort of freedom, some sort of confirmation. It's like I knew all my life something was wrong and I could never put my finger on it, could never explain it, and out of one word a woman says, and my entire life changed. That your life has been a lie. An entire lie. I was deceived. I was lied to. But when the floodgates opened and I knew I could make a choice, honey, believe me, I ran. I ran from them. Yeah, my parents don't talk to me anymore. But hey, I have freedom now.
And you can't talk to anybody on the outside. When you start to talk to people on the outside, you start to get a different value system. And you start to realize that this is a cult.
To give up my life, to give up my identity to this organization that I understand is completely scandalous. They're liars, and they completely rupture families. They destroy a person's identity. They take away your sense of self-worth. The selfishness that of a person who emotionally blackmails another person, holding their family hostage, trying to force that other person to live the way that that they want them to live. So, you know, you can call me selfish for just wanting to be myself and live my own life, but I think it's even more selfish on, you know, the part of Jehovah's Witnesses to, you know, emotionally try to blackmail and ruin people, trying to force them to live their way.
I started realizing that there was a lot of individuals that were getting hurt badly. Ostracism, sexual molestation, being torn away from their families.
And when I didn't measure up, I was angry with myself. I was like really starting to hate myself because I just couldn't be. I wanted to be so badly what they told me I should be and what God expected me to be. And I just couldn't do it. And I was really starting to hate myself for not living up, for not being good enough.
The ones who write to me, speak to me on a regular basis, telling me how they've lost their families, they've lost their friends, how it's hurt them. I get a lot of people writing to me these things. I see a lot of pain in the friends, sincere pain. I think of the ones inside who want to escape the Watchtower Society but are afraid to. And I wonder how many of you there are. Secretly wish to escape but you're afraid to because you'll lose your family and your friends. I can understand that very well. I often wonder what would happen if all of you out there that is secretly wishing to escape but are silent about this, afraid to be called an apostate, afraid of that label, afraid of losing your family and your friends. I wonder what would happen if all were to walk out at one time, just suddenly walk out. I dream of this. What would happen? How many would there be? What kind of impact would that have on the Watchtower Society? I escaped a cult, a destructive cult, and I am free.
Also, Jehovah's Witnesses have 5 to 10 times a higher suicide rate than the general population. Furthermore, Jehovah's Witnesses have a well-known policy of making sure that people do not take in blood, to refuse blood transfusions, and therefore wind up costing their lives. And this includes children. You can check in the May 1994 edition of Awake magazine and see right on the cover they have pictures of all kinds of kids that had died from refusing blood transfusions. Of course, their parents were enforcing this idea upon them. But here again, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses is well aware of all of this. They are very, very aware of the dangers that are posed by their policies for having people refuse voting cards in certain countries, for depression caused by people who are perhaps wanting to leave, and other circumstances, way beyond the normal depression. Deaths caused by people who are refusing blood transfusion because of their doctrine. And we're afraid to call Jehovah's Witnesses a cult? We're afraid to compare them with these other dangerous cults? Why? I mean, has it been that perhaps we're just comfortable where we're sitting all these years? If you're a former member of Jehovah's Witness, really, you should be thinking about how dangerous this cult is and how fortunate it was for you to be able to escape. But you can help prevent this by having society in itself recognize Jehovah's Witnesses as one of those religions that have the potential for being more dangerous than it already is. So what is our responsibility? And if you're thinking about becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses, know this: you're getting involved in a cult. I will not rest until religions like Jehovah's Witnesses are known by the public to be the danger that they are.
Many like myself are coming out and saying we need change. Something has to happen. The governments of the world have to recognise this is actually a very, very dangerous cult. It does break up families. It hurts people. It drives people to suicide. This has to stop. Something has to be done. Watch out for the Watchtower people. Be careful when they knock on your door. Don't be mean to them because they are brainwashed.
So after all of this ongoing research, I kept trying to show my mother everything that I've been finding. And of course, she would be talking to Dad about it, and to put it short, my mom is in major denial, and that is the nicest way I can put it. They are scared to know the facts of everything, the truth of the so-called truth. And that is, in all honesty, the truth. They are frightened to know the facts of their past history and their religion and all the cover-ups and what they've swept under the carpet.
Was the fact that so early on they teach you not to research the religion and look at the internet, the books, the publications, their past literature, and I began to really understand why they're so fearful and why they're so adamant about you not doing the research. Because when you look around the Kingdom Hall and you see Sister so-and-so and you see Brother so-and-so and you know the pioneers, the ministerial servants, the elders, the people at Bethel, the district overseer, these are the exact same people that you're looking at right in front of you that stepped out of the organization. They have walked away. They're not the boogeyman. They're not monsters. They're not devil worshippers. They're people who looked at the men in charge of this religion and calling themselves the governing body and came to understand the same things that I did. That this is not the channel that God's using, because you have to reason. Would God tell you, I want you to look at this, read this, follow this, and then say, never mind, I want you to follow only half of this, and I'm going to change the other half of it, and we're going to do it this way. And then down the line, scratch that. Actually, let's go back to the beginning. And then, no, wait, we're going to change this entirely and just do something different. We're going to put a doctrine and have people follow it, and if they don't, they get disfellowshipped and break their families apart and tear their children's lives apart and cause such heartache because they didn't follow our doctrine. But now, 5 years later, we're going to change that doctrine, and we're never mind. We're going to just go back to the beginning. We're going to act like we never even changed it.
And I know you said, that you've had a difficulty even going out of your house.
Yeah.
And I know that would be very difficult for you. But
Very
just let you
traumatic.
know, you are not alone.
No.
You are not alone. I lost my brother because he committed suicide because of this cult. And I don't want to see it happen to anyone else. So just know that
This cult's not worth it. It's
No.
truly not worth it.
all we know is that all of us are survivors and have a brotherhood from this cult.
Very fear-based religion. I mean, and you're bred on fear. There's just demons around every corner, and people are really paralyzed with fear. We were raised that we were not allowed to go to college. We were encouraged to quit high school when we were 16 and to go door knocking. So many people who stayed in the religion, they suffer. Economically, they suffer. If they didn't join the religion, with money or with property or with some kind of resources, a lot of them end up on welfare. It's just the depression, the sadness, the misery. They'll put on a smile after they knock on your door when they're trying to convince you. We were trained to do that. We were taught to smile. We were taught whenever we saw someone new walk through the door to put on a happy face, and that's exactly what we all did. But happy, no, we were miserable, we were ill emotionally, oftentimes physically, and so many people wasted their years and their lives. Jehovah's Witnesses spend a lot of time trashing the Catholic Church, but then when they get old, They don't even take care of their own, the leaders don't, and Jehovah's Witnesses end up in Catholic nursing homes, being nursed by the people who they spent years, hating.
No apologies, no nothing. There wasn't no apologies for my dad when he died in the early 80s. He died of shame and fear. He couldn't even get up off the floor. He allowed himself to get 500 pounds. He was so depressed. Jehovah only wants your best, he was told. If you're not giving your best in Jehovah's, it's not acceptable. Well, my dad didn't think he did his best because he worked out of town. And all of us boys sort of went wayward. And so he died. He died of shame. My mother is still in the mental ward today. Fearful that Jehovah's going to kill her. That's what she said the last time I saw her. Jehovah's going to kill me. Jehovah's going to kill me. It's a terrible thing. So I just want to tell you, if you know somebody studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, you better check it out. You better talk to that person. You better tell them to go to the internet and do some research about that organization. Look at some of the castles those anointed brothers lived in at the time of the Depression. While the world and people were sleeping on buses and stuff, they had mansions they were living in, those higher up brothers, so to speak. People don't know this. They're told not to look at the internet. They're told not to look at anything on there. It's poison.
They don't have it at all.
One of the reasons why we all know that there's this sort of endemic problem with alcohol within the religion is because it's a way of pacifying and relieving and offsetting the depression that many of them feel and the rut that they're in and the cycle that they're in, because they can't get out of it. They're trapped within it. So, in the privacy of their own homes, they drink, and who can blame them? Because it's
an
just
escapism for them.
It's a way out.
It's escapism to try and fill that lack of pleasure in the rest of their life, because they're not allowed pleasurable things in the rest of their life because they're so suppressed within the organisation. So they cling on to anything that they can do, and I think that that's why, specifically with the younger generation, that drinking to excess is the one thing that they can do behind closed doors that seems to be an okay thing with the other brothers and sisters around them.
Well,
because they're all
this
doing
is
the
the
same
interesting
thing.
point, babe, is that the younger generations, and we know lots of them, drink to excess with each other, and that's a very good point, because it's acceptable.
Yeah.
It's okay to drink. If they were to suddenly get cigarettes out and start smoking, that would be an appalling thing to do.
Yeah.
And they would all be absolutely horrified at anybody doing that. But with the alcohol, it's a very different subject, and they're allowed to drink, and so therefore they drink, and they drink to excess. More often than not.
The Watchtower Society has lost a legal battle connected with its role in handling matters of child abuse. As a result of this defeat, the Society is faced with paying millions of dollars in damages.
They've been abused by Jehovah's Witnesses.
So I was told to protect the person who actually abused me instead of me being protected. This man went on to molest other little children.
The Jehovah's Witnesses policies encourage abuse by not reporting allegations to police, choosing instead to handle individual cases internally. Today, a stuffed lamb was placed on the doors of area kingdom halls, telling victims they need be silent no more.
I grew up in Jehovah's Witnesses. I was third generation, and I was sexually abused in almost 5 years by an elder in the congregation. The governing body wrote a letter to all the elders in their congregation in Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. One of the paragraphs says, "It cannot be said in every case that one who has sexually abused a child could never qualify for privileges of service in the congregation. Keep in mind that the branch office, not the local body of elders, determines whether one who has sexually abused a child is considered a known child molester." I mean, this is really scary stuff. So let's take the next one. Not every individual who has sexually abused a child in the past is considered a predator. The branch office, not the local body of elders, determines whether an individual who has sexually abused children in the past will be considered a predator. I care about the people inside. You should all know that my family is in there.
My oldest daughter is in the Jehovah's Witnesses. She's now 22 years old. I haven't seen her since she was 9.
The Jehovah's Witnesses have settled 9 lawsuits alleging church policies protected men who abused children for many years. In settling, the church did not acknowledge wrongdoing. Now, evidence has surfaced that leaders did know about some of the men, but apparently never informed authorities.
Frederick McLean is among the country's most wanted fugitives, accused of molesting children for almost a decade.
His typical victims were young girls, I think starting around 5 or 6 years old.
Authorities say McLean was a respected leader in this congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses.
His role in the church was significant because we believe that his participation in the church gave him access to his victims.
The Jehovah's Witnesses recently agreed to pay to settle a lawsuit that alleged the church knew or should have known McLean was a pedophile. One of 9 similar cases church headquarters settled without admitting wrongdoing.
But internal church records now coming to light in those lawsuits show that the church knew for years that some prominent members were sexually abusing children and did little.
Example, James Henderson. Documents showed the church knew he was abusing kids as early as the 1970s and stripped him of his leadership role for a while, but apparently never alerted police. He was finally arrested in 1994 and went to prison, having molested children for 2 decades. Another church leader, Alvin Hurd, confessed to the church in 1981 that he'd abused 3 children, ages 5, 9, and 11. But again, the church apparently never notified police. Hurd, now in prison, admits he molested other children until 2003.
The policies and procedures enacted by Jehovah's Witnesses protect pedophiles rather than protect the children.
Barbara Anderson, a former Jehovah's Witness, is an outspoken critic of the church on this issue. She says the church prefers to keep an abuser's confession confidential.
They do not report child abuse to the authorities.
The church declined to speak on camera.
How it works in the Jehovah's Witness organization is they call it disfellowshipping, and it's a very cruel punishment. At that point, they consider you spiritually dead. Your relatives, your witnesses, friends will have nothing to do with you. My 2 children, I still have, to this day, will not talk to me. I've been out of the organization now for going on 6 years. And they still will just walk by you, or at least one of them walks by you, which you will see in the store, for example. And then the other sacrifice that you have to make when you leave the organization is all your friends as well. I had so many friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, I grew up with so many of them. And of course, they instantly disconnect from
Jehovah's Witnesses, they cut you off from your family. Your family's already brainwashed in advance. You know, when, you know, people, including their own family members, I mean, it just, you know, family members cutting off their own children, not allowing grandparents to see their own grandchildren, friends, you know, cutting each other off. I mean, I remember days when I was brainwashed and I knew when I saw someone who was an ex-Jehovah's Witness or they were disfellowshipped, excommunicated, I knew that I couldn't say hello to that person because if I did, the wrath of God would be on me.
Into a much more active mode. I mean, the shunning turns into something where they're doing it as a punishment now. It's like, you know, it goes from the vibe that you get. I mean, it's full of disdain. You know, really they think that you're something ugly, and that you know, they basically they look at you like you just committed treason. Like, how could you, you know, how could you betray us like that? And you know, you'll have friends and people and family that you've known your entire life who just all of a sudden really cut you off and really want nothing to do with you. I don't enjoy seeing my friends and family turn into zombies right in front of me.
You know, I lost my family years ago. I haven't seen most of my family in over 20 years. You know, I don't even know where my youngest brother is.
all escapees from cult mind control, when we get shunned or ignored or marginalized due to the Watchtower's human rights violations, due to their shunning policies which cause people to commit suicide every year. I'm not going to do that. You're not going to do that. They have been conditioned to think that if you leave their group, if you leave their club, you're now the enemy. You are the devil. You are demonized. You are satanic. You are not to be trusted. You see, they've had that indoctrination. We used to have it. You can probably relate to that. And so because of that, we want to cut them some slack. We want to say, okay, you know what? As an individual, this is probably a nice person. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're following God's laws or God's will. So I've been trying to work on that, not have animosity towards any individual witnesses that do that fake, walk right past me, pretend they don't see me.
20 years ago, I was initiated into a cult. At the age of 10, I became formally one of Jehovah's Witnesses. This child wouldn't have known what shunning is. This child didn't know that she was being sworn in or welcomed into a cult. This child didn't know who the governing body was. This child went into a legally binding contract with an organization and didn't even realize it. That child never would have imagined the pain and heartache that they would have to go through. And the pain that comes from what that religion has done, what that cult has done. These two women right here are now shunning me, shunning this, because of that decision I made when I was 10 years old. If this child would have known about the damaging policy that the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society has about shunning former members, I never would have gotten baptized. And those are my grandmas. I cannot move on with my life at this point knowing that there are people who are still becoming Jehovah's Witnesses every day, knowing that children as young as 6 years old now are being baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses, to get people educated, to know the damage that this religion does. And as long as this religion still protects child molesters and promotes this policy of shunning, I will be one of the loudest voices screaming at the top of my lungs to expose them for what they are.
And in Watchtower's case, no mercy is applied whatsoever. If they can get away with making life miserable for disfellowship people and driving them to commit suicide, that's precisely what they'll do. This is evidence, as far as I'm concerned, that you're evil. Because in front of another audience, you tell parents that it's okay to blackmail their kids into making a lifelong commitment to an organisation that they will be held to till their dying breath. And then in front of another audience in another part of the world, you can look them in the eyes and say, it's a voluntary thing. We volunteered for this. No. You look at this audience in Rome and you tell them, oh, we're not tying people to their seats. We're not locking the doors. People are free to go whenever they want. It's a free thing. It's a voluntary thing. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I was in front of a judicial committee just over 3 weeks ago, and I have been disassociated, severed from my family. My dad, in particular, is shunning me for a decision I made when I was 11. My own father is being used as a weapon, as a means of punishment against me, simply for going back on a decision I made when I was 11 and leaving a religion I now know to be false. You cannot lie to people, Tony. I won't have it. I won't have you lie to people and tell the world, tell Jehovah's Witnesses that they're free. That they're free to leave whenever they want, because they're not. You're threatening them. You're holding them hostage. You're using the most sacred thing in the world, a person's loved ones, and you're taking those loved ones, turning them into a weapon, and making them hate people who leave. Making them believe that people like me are mentally diseased, are gangrenous, are eating at the table of demons. And you think people are free to leave? Well, you clearly don't think that, but that's what you're saying to people. And that's why you're evil, Tony.
The February 15, 2012 Watchtower. Selma recalls a lesson she learned from a witness who studied with her. On one particular day, says Selma, I didn't want to have a Bible study. The night before, Steve had hit me as I tried to prove a point, and I was feeling sad and sorry for myself. After I told the sister what had happened and how I felt, she asked me to read 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. As I did, I began to reason, Steve never does any of these loving things for me. But the sister made me think differently by asking, how many of those acts of love do you show towards your husband? My answer was none, for he is so difficult to live with. The sister softly said, Selma, who is trying to be a Christian here, you or Steve? Realizing that I needed to adjust my thinking, I prayed to Jehovah to help me be more loving towards Steve. Slowly, things started to change. After 17 years, Steve accepted the truth. This is the kind of bullshit that kept me in my abusive relationship. This is the kind of crap that has been fed to make me believe that the fact that I was a punching bag was my fault. This is the kind of stuff that taught me that I was a doormat and that I had really no rights whatsoever as a human being.
And the memories that my mother has, no woman should ever have to deal with that. She went to the elders because one night the abuse got a little too much that she could handle. Because that's who you go to. You go to the elders, and they are there to guide you. The elders told her that it was her job, it was her responsibility to stay with him and to help him. And because that's what the elders told her, like any Jehovah's Witness or ex-Jehovah's Witness knows, basically the elder's word is the word from God. Beating her and throwing her through windows and taking her head and her body and throwing it into walls and making holes, and him coming after me and my mom stepping in between me and him to protect me and getting the brunt of all of it just because the elders told her that was her job. For you men out there, or you ladies out there, if you want to continue to hit your spouse and for your spouse to be told it's okay, you should go be a witness. And if you did not sense my sarcasm, I can't help you. I can't help you.
My two older boys, he used to beat almost every day. Your self-worth is zero. You don't have any self-worth whatsoever. I would go into the bedroom and I would call the elders and I would hold the phone up and I'd say, can you hear what he's doing to us? He's threatening to kill us. And they said, you have to be submissive wife. You will win him over by being quiet. You have to show respect and let him be head of the house.
This is ridiculous. I can't believe that they're still teaching this stuff. Yeah. These men who have been sheltered their whole lives, like I said, don't know what century they live in, have no idea what kind of horrors go on behind closed doors. You know,
spousal abuse, domestic violence leads to death. And you know, if you've watched my videos, you know that I absolutely 100% believe that this is a destructive mind control cult. And this is part of the destructive side of it. And in any mind control cult, whether they're 10 members or whether they're 10 million members, the women are always fodder. The women are always less than nothing. And it's the same in this organization. And this proves it right here.